Hello, world. Welcome to the Breakout Finder podcast. I'm your host, Nate Liss. You can find me on Twitter at @AnOutrageedJew. And with me, as always, is Mr. Ryan Lopes, who's clearly overdressed tonight. You can find him on Twitter at StillRyan5. And our big guest for the evening, I'm sure many of you already know who he is. He's done plenty of work in the Dynasty community. He's a writer for The Athletic. He's a ranker at fantasypros.com. Mr. Brad Ziegler. You can find him on Twitter at Brad Ziegler. How is it going, guys?
Doing awesome. I'm excited to be here, guys.
I threw the blazer on last. We tried to run this last week. I don't know if Nate's shared too much in the timeline. We had Brad. We sat here. Technical difficulties got the best of the team, but Brad showed up looking sharp as hell with a blazer on. So I told Nate when Brad hopped off, I said, Nate, no matter what happens next week, buddy, we're doing the show, and I'm coming with a blazer on. And threw a little pocket square in there too, boys. I feel great.
Ooh.
I'm ready to rock.
That's a level that I don't have yet, so I appreciate that.
That's a level of sophistication.
I figured after Sunday's game, I don't know that I could be more classy than what I'm wearing.
No, you look fantastic, Brad. You do, and the headband is you're over the top with it, and I respect it so much.
I mean, so Brad, so for people that are going to watch this video, they're probably thinking to themselves, that's a lot of baseballs behind this guy. So I didn't lead in with it, but you want to give people your background momentarily?
Sure. Just about a year and a half ago, retired from an 11-year Major League Baseball career. I'm a big-time collector, so my office is immersed in baseball memorabilia, and I always just thought this would be a cool backdrop behind my desk, and just have a bunch of autograph balls up there, and it's fun. I enjoyed collecting. It's a very tedious process putting the display up. But once I got it done and you know, it'll actually here, I'll even give you a little bonus.
Oh, here we go.
Love this. I love this.
Lights
stuff.
up a little bit.
Signed up for.
Oh,
little LED guys back
man.
there.
It's
not quite closet doors, but it's nice. I mean, you haven't.
That's fair. I mean,
yeah, you know what I mean?
There is a certain level of closet door that it's, you got to kind of work your way up to that level.
Yeah. There's a lot of gems back there, boys.
Yeah, you either closet door or you don't, and clearly you don't, and I appreciate that about you. You know, I went back to look at some of the information about your baseball career. My dad, I grew up a huge A's fan. Obviously, you played for the Oakland Athletics for a time, and I was looking back there, man, and I saw that you played with Nomar Garciaparra.
Yeah.
And a tear rolled down my cheek, man, because that guy to me is a legend. I don't know if he's in the Hall of Fame, but I love that guy, man.
Yeah, no, he not a Hall of Famer, but he was a really good teammate, really good veteran to have in that locker room. And for me personally, he took me aside a couple times and let me know when I needed to make some adjustments, and I respected that about him. And it was awesome too, because his wife Mia was around all the time with their little boys, and they had two little twin boys, and she was always waiting in the family tunnel after the game, and that was kind of surreal. Like being with Nomar was cool, but like being with Mia Hamm, that was a little different level.
Dope.
Yeah, that is wild, man. That's incredible. And do you play fantasy football with any of the guys that you played with in the league before?
Oh yeah, I've got a dynasty league that I'm gonna say 8 or 9 of the guys in the league are baseball players or maybe former baseball players. I think they're all current besides me. Patrick Corbin, Brian Holiday, Jeremy Hellickson. I gotta think about what teams did I whoop up on this year. But there's a few. Shelby Miller, David Hernandez. There's quite a few guys in there, guys that I was just teammates with. We'd play in the team fantasy football league, and then I got the urge to start I'd been in a keeper league where we got a couple keepers each year, and I was like, I need to go to the next level, and I asked a bunch of guys to join, and they're like, man, that's too intense for me. And I finally found the right guys, and we've had that league since 2016 now, and it's been a blast. It's been a lot of fun, and Ricky Weeks was in it 1 year.
Oh, nice. And
we had to replace him. It was just kind of too much for him, and we actually replaced him with Jeff Erickson for RotoWire. So we've got a couple. Scott Genstad that also does some stuff for RotoWire. He's also in that league, and then a couple buddies of mine too.
I love it, man. And so I heard a rumor. It may not be a rumor that you once upon a time played in a fantasy football league with Ken Griffey Jr. Is this true?
It is true. It was actually run by XM Radio.
Wow.
And so Fred McGriff was in that league.
Oh, the
Petey
crime
Cabilia
dog.
was in that league. It was a lot of fun. But
I want to say, can we talk about the crime dog since you brought him up? Is there
Yeah.
a sadder story in the world than the 500 home run club and the crime dog? Would he miss it by like 6?
like 7, yeah,
Ah.
and for some reason that probably like legitimately has kept him out of the Hall of Fame, which I think is a joke. You mix in how good his postseason numbers were, and there's no doubt in my mind he should be in there, especially when there's guys already in the Hall of Fame that I'm pretty certain took steroids, and he did like never had suspicion. Like you looked at him, he was big, wiry, kind of like not a big, strong guy, and you just like there's no way he took him, and he still dropped 493 homers or whatever, and yeah, he should be in the Hall for sure.
One of the craziest things ever. I know people don't want to hear us talk about baseball all episode, but I want to talk to you about baseball. I love it. Listen, man, so here's a question. How did you go from playing a professional sport to doing fake sports online? Like, what's this transition? How did you get into this? You're a ranker, and you had some weeks this year where you were a very successful in-season ranker, right?
Yeah, I had a number 1 week. I had a number 3 week. I think I had a couple like just outside the top 10, number 11, number 13. So I had some good weeks. Overall, I had some weeks that were just so terrible though that it drug my cumulative average down. Like I was sitting in the 130s 1 week, and just some rough plays. But I went. Jake Seeley tried to tell me, he's my co-host on our athletic podcast, and he said, when you're ranking, you basically don't want to do bold takes. If you stick to the average, you're able to, you're going to miss on some, but you're going to be right there with everybody else. Mm-hmm. And I was like, forget that. Like and I had a week where, let me think, Ross Dwelly. I put Ross Dwelly as like the number 1 tight end because they were going against the Cardinals, and of course he went like over 100 with a touchdown that week, and might have been the week I was number 1, and I was like, Ross Dwelly.
You just need that. You need that one player. Yeah, you need that one player.
And so, but I probably went too bold sometimes. I was definitely not as high on Derrick Henry as I should have been, and I was definitely too high on Damian Williams than I should have been. Even though like D-Well played pretty well whenever he got the chance. He was just hurt a lot this year, but that was the big knock with him, was like he'd never been a full-time bell cow back. Can he handle it? Then they bring in LaShawn McCoy, and for a few weeks you didn't know who was going to play, and it was it was a mess to try to rank. I will say that, but he's showing up now in the playoffs, that's for sure.
Yeah, limited opportunity share, man, all season long kind of crippled him. But look, we all agree Kansas City is the prime location for a 2020 rookie back to land.
Absolutely.
I don't know if we're going to talk about that on this episode, but you put anybody with Patrick Mahomes, automatic jumping up that draft board, even if they take a guy in the 3rd round and he's the 4th back take and 5th back take in rookie drafts, man, that guy is going to get vaulted upward. And one last question for you, Brad. Were you nominated for Fantasy Analyst of the Year?
I was. I somehow pulled that off. I've had a lot of fun with the podcast and doing the ranking and stuff. And apparently I made an impression with somebody, because it was really cool to get nominated, especially with the other 24 names that were on that list. It was all ESPN and Yahoo guys, and like, the JJ Zacharias, big names that like guys that I follow on Twitter to get more information, prior to doing this myself. And to see, to get mentioned with them in my first year of doing it, I thought was a, pretty neat honor. And, wasn't a finalist and didn't necessarily expect to be a finalist, because sometimes when you're doing an internet vote, it can end up being a pretty big popularity contest. And I made enough enemies while I was playing baseball. I don't think anyone's going to vote for me. Absolutely,
man. Well, listen, obviously the accolades speak for themselves. People, if you don't follow Brad on Twitter, at Brad Ziegler, the man is a walking legend. He's probably beanballed some of the greatest hitters of our generation. And I want to get into this episode, Brad. I want to start right at the top. There's been a lot of buzz since the New England Patriots were bounced out of the NFL postseason. Derrick Henry literally ran them over, almost literally ran them over. And there's questions whether or not Tom Brady comes back to the New England Patriots. So with that being said, the season that we saw with Nkeal Harry, which is a forgettable year in 2019, is he better off with or without Tom Brady in New England in 2020?
I'm going to lean to without, but I think some of that depends on who replaces Brady. Because I mean, if Jarrett Stidham ends up being the guy there, I don't know that you can say like, oh, Nkeal Harry's going to take off. At the same time, if they bring in a Andy Dalton or a Phillip Rivers, it's possible that you get somebody that might throw the ball a little better than Brady. The one thing that I think could be really beneficial if Brady does come back is sitting in the film room with him, assuming that quarterbacks and wide receivers are in there watching film together. I feel like Brady would be able to like tell him like, look, when they're doing a zone, like look at this gap here. This is where you got to go. Whatever. I don't know. Just it just feels like there's 20 years of expertise there from the best to ever do it that you might be able to pick some stuff up on. But as far as getting him the ball, I think it'd probably be nice if he had someone with a little more juice in his arm. That's for sure.
What do you got, Ryan? What's your take on this?
Yeah, Harry was. It's been. There's been some dark times for us, Nate. I know we talked up Harry quite a bit. The breakout finder absolutely loved Nkeal Harry, the 57 overall, like all-time breakout finder prospect, 52.7% breakout rating, ridiculous 71st percentile dynamic score, obviously a low teammate score. So Harry was a player that we both loved from a film number breakout finder standpoint. Banged up to kind of start his rookie career, of course, as Brad just touched on, got certainly a declining Tom Brady. The big question is what happens after Tom Brady? Like who is that quarterback if it's not Tom Brady? I find myself going back to one of Matt Kelly's spiels where it might have been you and Matt, Nate, talking about a prospect in AJ Brown, where above all else, quarterback situation, landing spot, surroundings, all that stuff. Above all else, you want to trust in the talent at the end of the day. And Nkeal Harry, by all metrics here, I just ran through the breakout finder numbers and what the breakout finder thinks from him. We're, of course, big fans of him. So above all else, this is still a talented player. And Julian Edelman getting up there in age, found himself in a little bit of trouble off the field. Not too many other weapons to speak of in New England right now. Quarterback, again, in flux, but Nkeal Harry's in a prime position to perhaps, have these targets just straight funneled to him, no matter who's under center. And if it's not Tom Brady, that might be a bigger benefit, bigger boon to Harry's targets, because he is all of a sudden that de facto, reliable, young, talented player that whoever the new quarterback may be is going to look for. So I'm kind of excited about the post Brady era in New England for Nkeal Harry. Maybe that's just my Harry hopefulness and bias speaking. Nate, are we in lockstep, or you want some more Tom Brady out there?
Well, here's what I will say about Tom Brady. Clearly, he's not ready to retire. I mean, he's made that evident in the statements that he's recently had. But look, let's go back and look at some of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Is he more John Elway, 16 years with Denver? Is he more Troy Aikman, 12 years with Dallas, never left? Or is he Brett Favre, 16 with Green Bay, then he goes to the Jets. Peyton Manning did 13 with the Colts, then he went to Denver. Montana did 13 with San Francisco and went to KC, Brad. I mean, I don't know what Brady is. Some people believe Brady's gone this far with New England. He's an icon there. He's the greatest quarterback of all time. Why would he put a different jersey on at this point in his career? But at the same time, we've seen legends do it.
Yeah, and he, one thing about him is he's always taken less money in an extension than what the top quarterbacks get paid. And, he's not that he's hurting. I mean, he's got a wife that makes probably more money than he does. And he also, has endorsements, anytime he wants them. This is his first time ever being an unrestricted free agent. He's never, since he was drafted, he always just kept signing extensions. Maybe sometime he wants to just kind of see what's out there for me. Even though I'm, 40 years old or whatever, what is out there for me? Who might bring me in, even from a marketing standpoint, generate more fans? Because right now he's got a fan base in New England for sure, but there's a lot of people outside of New England that are not Patriots fans. They maybe he wants to prove that he can go win somewhere where they're not cheating all the time.
You think maybe
I love that.
You think maybe Tom Brady would be a winner if he went and played for the Chargers and had Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry and some tough running back behind him and got to play somewhere a little warmer? I mean, is there a chance there? We keep hearing about the Phillip Rivers Tom Brady swap. Is it possible? I don't know. That would be amazing, Brad. But not more amazing than Taysom Hill. because Taysom Hill has shocked the world this year, and you had quite a take on him. So here's my question to you, Brad, and then Ryan will get your take. How bad does Taysom Hill hurt Alvin Kamara's fantasy value?
So I mentioned this, kind of tongue-in-cheek on Twitter, but then as I watched the game unfold, there was no doubt that when he's on the field, it hurts Alvin Kamara. It hurts Michael Thomas, believe it or not, because they're always trying to do something to get him the ball or get him there. And it feels like, in points per game this year, Drew Brees was a number 5 quarterback. I know he was hurt for a little bit, but he was still an elite quarterback. And yet they felt the need to run these gadget plays all the time, or having Taysom Hill line up at quarterback. And Brees seemed to love it. Like, he seemed to be like the guy's biggest fan. But when he's getting all these touchdown opportunities inside the 5, and Kamara, he ended the year with maybe 6 touchdowns or something, and after having 18 the year before, you can't help but think that, like, the more they got Taysom Hill involved, the more it hurt Kamara. And now Taysom Hill's a free agent. It's going to be a huge deal as to whether or not they bring him back. And if they do, I'm a little less high on Kamara, just because I feel like they're trying to get extra gadgety and do all these things that the 21st century is bringing with it.
Ryan, what do you got here?
Dude, from a pure, your fantasy league is done and over with. You're at home on the couch just enjoying football. Like, what Taysom Hill does is just so fun. Like, he lines up everywhere, does everything as Brad says, and legit vultures as much as anyone could possibly vulture. So in season, if you are a Kamara owner, obviously that's super frustrating. But I am curious, and I'm going to kind of answer your question by maybe asking you a question, Nate. Like, I don't know. I don't know what to think of Taysom Hill outside of New Orleans. Sean Payton, obviously a super talented play caller. That offense has been humming ever since he's gotten there. Having Drew Brees certainly doesn't hurt things. But if the Saints don't bring Taysom Hill back in this pure gadgety, backup quarterback type role, whatever you want to call him, what do we trust other teams, Nate, to roll out and deploy, Taysom Hill in this, in these just purely ideal situations that he always consistently finds himself in, scoring a pair of touchdowns a week, throwing, receiving. He does it. He literally does it all. I don't know that he does that without Sean Payton on the headset, but do you have high hopes for him? Like, I guess the question I have for you is, where do your hopes kind of lie? And number 2, where is that fit outside of New Orleans? Is there a fit outside of New Orleans?
Here's what I'll say. My hopes aren't really high on 29-year-old gadget quarterback Taysom Hill. And here's the thing. Taysom Hill's not only successful because he's playing with Sean Payton. He's successful because in the flow of this offense, he gets inserted at the right moments and is able to make these plays. I'm not sure there's very many offenses that get into the flow and are as efficient as the New Orleans Saints are, that can plug in a guy and utilize him this way. And I'm not sure that there's a coaching staff or a scheme or a group of players on one team that are a better fit than they are here in New Orleans. And I agree with Brad. When you look at Alvin Kamara this year, you go back to 2018, he scored 18 touchdowns. This year, as Brad noted, he only had 6. And this is the most variable fantasy football stat ever. It is the reason why I am caping up for Leonard Fournette as hard as I am. I got a bobblehead over there to prove it. But the point is that there's such a variable because, look, Alvin Kamara had a down year, but guess what? His opportunity share actually rose this year. He was the number 16 at the position last year. He was 13 this year, so it actually went up. But the real dagger to Alvin Kamara's season, in 2018, he had 72 red zone touches. In 2019, he had 36. He went from the number 2 at the position to number 17. So that's a big reason why a lot of touchdowns disappeared for Alvin Kamara. But in addition to that, yeah, you're finding other guys on the field that are becoming, easier utilized. Taysom Hill is a great weapon in this offense. Will he be a great weapon elsewhere? I don't know. I'm not buying him necessarily. He could be a throw-in at this point literally anywhere for somebody who thinks that he could be. But I'm not sure what offense and what creative mind he would have to go to. Like if he went to KC, maybe that feels like an offense that could use him. I don't know. You're seeing Tennessee do it a little bit with Mariota. They're bringing him in a bit. But even then, I'm not sure that he's as dynamic and as talented as Taysom Hill is one for one. But Brad, a very talented wide receiver has been in the discussion recently, and I ran a poll on Twitter for this question, and it is in regards to DJ Moore. Are you familiar with who DJ Moore is? Do you know this guy?
I'm very familiar with DJ Moore.
Okay, so here's a question for you about DJ Moore. I asked this question back on December 29th of 2019. It is 2020 now. It's a whole new year, so we can either accept this or we can throw it in the trash. It only got 1,000 or so votes. I said, DJ Moore in Dynasty, where do you rank him? I put top 15, top 10, top 5. Now listen, some people trolled me. They said, how come there's not a top 25? Listen, because I think he's inside that, but I want your take. It was razor thin between top 15 and top 10 because I didn't give people another option. Brad, DJ Moore, how high should we be on this precocious talent?
First of all, how many people thought he was top 5? Because that's a little sketchy there.
11.7%.
That's 100 people that voted for him. So and Ryan's on board that train too. So I definitely think it's a top 10 dynasty receiver. I think it's at the bottom tier of the top 10. But there's plenty of guys that if I'm doing a dynasty startup right now, I'm definitely drafting him as one of the first 10 wide receivers. And if I get him after that, I feel like I got a steal. Because there's just not, there's a few guys there. Ryan was alluding to it a second ago. Trust the guy's talent more than the situation. The situation can change all the time. We saw that with A.J. Brown this year. When Marcus Mariota was there, A.J. Brown had no shot. And as soon as Tannehill stepped in, A.J. Brown became an elite receiver. And that situation can change at any moment. For Juju, he went the other way. He had Big Ben and AB there to be a compliment. AB left. We believed in Juju, but didn't know what he was going to do. And then Big Ben went down, and we found out at a minimum he's not quarterback proof just because if you can call what they were putting in there after that injury quarterback, then we'll at least say that he's not completely quarterback proof. But he has an immense amount of talent. I think DJ Moore is just as talented as Juju is. And now he's got a very offensive-minded coach coming in, and they just hired, the LSU passing game coordinator to be their OC. There's going to be a big-time focus on the passing game there, and it excites me about DJ Moore. It excites me about Curtis Samuel. It excites me even more about Christian McCaffrey, if that's possible, and mix in whatever receiver they bring in because, there's going to be big-time opportunity there. They're going to hopefully it's Cam. Hopefully Cam's healthy and doing it, but they're going to find a quarterback to run that offense. There's no way they're not going to.
Listen, man, are we not thinking that maybe Cam Newton plus a first-round pick plus another first-round pick gets you up there for Joey Burrow? Is that what's happening?
Oh, I don't know. That'd be the only thing about that is you're probably trending toward a later first-round pick at that point. I think they would love it. Joe Brady's probably like, hey, do whatever we can to get me my guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're talking a guy, a lot of the stats that I look at are just through the first 16 weeks because every league I play in doesn't play week 17. Right. And so, he's the PPR wide receiver 12 through week 16, and he missed most of week 16 after he got the concussion. And like I said, he basically had you guys playing quarterback for him. So he's the only thing really separating him from the rest of the guys who were ahead of him was touchdowns. Only one guy ahead of him had less touchdowns, and that was Robert Woods. And Robert Woods also added 115 rushing yards. So he's got a bonus kind of 10 points built in that way. But everyone else had at least 2 more touchdowns than DJ Moore. And I feel like when you get this offensive-minded coach there, the offense is going to be a little bit better. They're going to say, look, this guy's a red zone threat. He's got to get the ball. Force it to him. Make him – he can be a contested catch guy. Force the ball to him. Get him his opportunities. And, he was top 10 in wide receiver targets this year, and I don't think there's any reason why he can't be top 10 in fantasy finish next year, let alone going forward.
I love it. Ryan, Carousel, coming your direction. DJ Moore.
Dude, I mean, Moore was a player and a prospect that I just fell over here. I pulled up playerprofile.com looking at DJ Moore. Marcus Mosier might have logged on a few days ago and also shared a snapshot of his player profile page and basically said there was no way that DJ Moore was ever going to not be a hit, that he was going to bust at any point. And that's just such a Mosier tweet, just on one side of the just zero room for argument there. But I mean, looking at his profile, he does have a really good point, man. 6 foot, 210 pounds. He's super young. 97th percentile college dominator rating. 98th percentile breakout age. 92nd percentile Spark X score. Just a player that across the board, number wise, metric wise, checked all the boxes. Then you throw on his tape. Super dynamic. They were running him everywhere at Maryland. Like Brad said, contested catch situations, down the field, out of the backfield. He does it all. I'm a big Cam Newton guy. I hope he gets back. Like Nate shared the date of the poll, so it's not fair for me to sit here and talk about a vote now that I may or may not have. But inserting Joe Brady into the picture, as Brad kind of alluded to, coming off of what he did at Louisiana State, knowing that he was in New Orleans prior to that, learning under Sean Payton, kind of putting that all together. His resume, man, is popping right now. It's a good landing spot. The pieces are there. DJ Moore, for me, he's a top 5 dynasty wide receiver, if not inside the top 5. I'm not quite ready to let go of like a DeAndre Hopkins yet. We're going to talk about Julio Jones a little bit later on. I think, unfortunately, it's time to slide him down. Devontae Adams is still there. I'm going to be a bit lower on Juju Smith-Schuster myself, but between guys like Mike Thomas, Chris Godwin, DJ Moore, AJ Brown, who we're all gonna talk more about, I'm sure. I think that's kind of the group that makes up the top of my personal rankings, anyways. So DJ Moore, just a great talent all around, and now again, knowing that the poll was out last year versus where we are now with the Joe Brady hire, the Joe Brady hire only kind of boosts that for me. Nate, are you as stoked as I'm about Moore? Are you a bit more in that top 10, 15 category?
Here's the thing. I mean, this fits perfectly. I recently wrote an article on Patreon that went over this age apex, right? Age 25 to 29. Some guys exceed it. Julio Jones, Larry Fitzgerald, Vincent Jackson. Some guys exceed this age apex, this mythological fog that rises from the ground and cuts people down at the knees at some point. But the players, the Odell Beckhams, the DeAndre Hopkins, the Robert Woods, the Keenan Allens, the guys that are mid-27, they're in their prime right now. And as Brad said, we're talking about DJ Moore, who finished with 15.4 fantasy points per game, age 22 and a half, almost 23 years old. Super young. At some point, as fantasy owners, we have to consider the idea that you have to sell high on some of your high-end talent. And I tend to wait till the very end of that clock, age 28, because what happens is, regardless if the guy's playing well or not, if you want to move off of him as an owner, people are going to devalue him based on the perceived apex and age and all these things. So with that being said, going back to DJ Moore, yeah, to me, he's right there as a top 10 receiver because of age, production, and the fact that Christian McCaffrey has eaten up so much opportunity, and despite that, DJ Moore has found a role. DJ Moore has had terrible quarterback play all year long, but he finishes number 10 in overall targets, and that's in 15 games. Number 8 in yards after the catch. Number 1 in yards after the catch per reception. Then at age 22, finishes with 87 catches for nearly 1,200 yards. And Football Outsiders has basically dumped hot lava on any quarterback that threw him the ball while in Carolina. So similar to what I feel about Leonard Fournette's situation in Jacksonville as a runner and how things cannot get worse, I don't feel like things can necessarily get worse for DJ Moore. I mean, Curtis Samuel already broke 100 targets this year. So that's there. That happened. So we don't have to fear that in the future, but we still saw him with over 130 targets, I believe, this season, even with Curtis Samuel doing that. We saw Christian McCaffrey maintain the same high volume go-to role. So if efficiency goes up, if quarterback play goes up, if they decide, like Brad said, to continue to put the ball in the hands of an elite playmaker, then I don't see why there's any reason people should be fearful of investing heavily in a guy that's not 23 yet, in an offense that can only truly get better in terms of downfield passing. So that answers that question, Brad. And I mentioned Patreon, and on Patreon, we put up a weekly post where the patrons can ask a question to us if it's a pod with just Ryan and I, or they can extend the question to the expert guest that we have. And this week, Brad, you are the expert
That's
guest.
you, Brad. That's you. Headband and all.
For anybody that wants to get in on this, to be able to ask elite talent like Brad Ziegler, played in the league, but finished number 1 as a ranker this year. So he's got the skills. Go check out Patreon, patreon.com/breakout finder. Brad, I'm going to read you one of these questions. He has no idea what they say. He's unaware. He hasn't seen them. Totally blindfolded. This is how good this guy is. This is from Purple Rain 23. Growing community. Lots of questions in here for you. Would like to hear thoughts on the likelihood of Gardner Minshew having success as a starting quarterback. Am I off my rocker for thinking he can be a top 10, top 15 quarterback in fantasy? Brad, is that a hot takey question, or is there a real shot?
Man, I got to go with that's a hot takey question, but I think there's a chance. I just don't think it's likely. And the biggest reason is not whether or not Gardner Minshew is a good quarterback. It's more the concept of look at the guys he's got to jump over to get into there. And you're talking, not everybody's proven. I mean, it's I don't know who's down around 15 now. You're talking maybe like a Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan. That to me just seems like I don't see Gardner Minshew in that category. And that being said, there are weapons there. I love DJ Shark. DJ Shark to me is a top 15 dynasty receiver, and I'm trying to grab him everywhere I can. I like the complementary pieces. I think they can be upgraded, but they're decent. You already talked about Fournette, and what you expect out of him going forward. I think there's a really good chance that Minshew can be a good quarterback. I'm just worried it's kind of more like the Nick Foles type, where like he can win a lot of games, but he's going to finish in the 20s in fantasy. Just because I don't see him being a prolific guy. That being said, I love him. I love watching him play. I love the attitude. I love the swagger that he comes with. I hope he gets there, because I think his Minshew mania can take off and be spectacular if he gets there. And Ryan, I don't know I'm trying to think like what you think on this, but I don't see him being a top 15 quarterback anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Minshew aesthetic, the jean shorts, all that stuff, man. The headband, as you know very well, Brad, just that whole look, that whole swag, that means so much. But I think you're spot on when you mention just that kind of grouping in the middle, that 15 to 18 range, whether it's the Matt Ryans. You got guys like Ryan Tannehill that have instantly vaulted themselves kind of in that 12, 15, 16 range right now too. We don't really quite know, Josh Allen's probably there. Guys like Jared Goff that are kind of just fumbling around, that are still tied to good offenses and good play callers. So to me, as much as I also like DJ Shark, not as big on Lenny Fournette as someone like Nate is, but in general, DJ Shark is certainly in that top 10, top 15 wide receiver conversation. I just don't know that Shark and Shark alone is enough to kind of completely, leapfrog, as you said, Brad, like all these kind of, mid-range type quarterbacks. I want to say like some of his best weeks will be up there with some of the most fun, explosive type offenses that we see, but I think those will be kind of few and far between. I don't see kind of a sustained path to success, so to speak, to kind of lock in that top 15, top 10, ranking. So I do think Purple Rain, unfortunately, buddy, that's a bit of a hot one for me.
Unbelievable. Do you not remember when he went to Tennessee and they won 20-7? He had a 66% completion percentage, over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Tom Brady couldn't do that. We're talking about Gardner Minshew here.
It's a good point.
Right? I get the aesthetic. Here's my thing about Gardner Minshew. When you have a top 15 wide receiver and you have a top 5 running back.
I don't. Go on, Nate. Just keep
talking.
Keep going.
I just wanted to bask in. It was like warm sunlight. You know when a dog lays on its back and the sun hits it in the belly?
I'm so upset with you right now.
That's what that felt like. He had top 5. So when you look at what he did, his body of work, coming from where he came from, I mean, Gardner Minshew, not an early draft pick, right? That Tom Brady syndrome, a 6th-round draft pick, that chip on his shoulder to go with the jorts in the post game.
Love the jorts.
There's a lot of reasons to like him. I think we saw flashes. Hard to say top 15 in Dynasty because despite the fact that even like Brad mentioned, Aaron Rodgers is getting a little older, Aaron Rodgers is still a finisher. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is still an elite playmaker despite the fact that he's getting a bit older. They could upgrade the weapons in Green Bay. I mean, that's the thing, too. We love Gardner Minshew. We believe the fact that Jacksonville is going to fix this problem, that it can only get better. It can't get worse. It's been awful. The Nick Foles contract is the worst since Brock Osweiler, and it can't get worse. But when I look at him and I look at the landscape of the NFL, what I question about ranking him in the top 10 and top 15 is these guys that are fringe, 10 through 15 already, if they get a new running back, if they get an upgrade in the O-line, if they get an OC change, if they get a wide receiver, those guys are already going to jump ahead of Minshew. I mean, the only thing that's going to defeat these other players like Rodgers is truly age. You know, injury to Devontae Adams, or I want out of my contract. I mean, it would be tough to ever rank him above that. But then again, you got to be able to read tomorrow's newspaper today. So if you believe that Gardner Minshew is and you invest in him and that happens for you, then it's a huge boon to your offense, to your fantasy football team. I like him. I don't think Nick Foles is getting the keys to the car back anytime soon. But I think that top 15 is pushing it. I think you could put him between 15 and 20, and that's pretty close to where he ranked in a majority of his advanced metrics in 2019 as well. Brad, let's go to another question here. And I know you haven't heard these, so that was a very, very good take. It sounded rehearsed, but
want to be clear, he's never seen these questions.
Credits to you. This is what you do. I mean, you've found the time, you've put in the work, and clearly out the other end comes gold.
I got a lot of time on my hands right now being retired. So
yeah, it's a loom and you're just spinning gold over there. So let's go. We've got Chris here, and Chris asks, I'm seeing tons of folks saying to sell McLaurin, sell Debo, sell Deontay Johnson, and several other 2019 breakouts with evidence that amounts to this 2020 class is special. So how wise is that advice, he asks? I'm not convinced that any of these teams are taking elite receivers until next year at best. Even better for us, as good as A.J. Brown has been, would the Titans make sense for drafting another wide receiver? Lastly, what's the realistic range of fantasy finishes we see for all these 2019 wide receivers in the 2020 season? So let's talk about McLaurin, Debo, Deontay in any order you want, and address this question however you'd like. There's a lot of meat on this bone.
Sure. So, I mean, I guess, when you're saying sell or should we sell or whatever, it all depends on value, because in a realistic scenario, there's no one that's untouchable. It's just a matter of what someone is willing to pay. I mean, if even a Christian McCaffrey, if a guy's going to give you the first 3 picks in the 2020 draft plus, Derrick Henry, then you would trade Christian McCaffrey probably in that scenario. Outside of that, I'm it's maybe not a realistic offer. I wouldn't do it. On these guys, I love Deebo Samuel. I think he's a really good fit for that offense. I think they're going his game elevated when Emmanuel Sanders came in, and Sanders is still there. He's not going anywhere. They're probably going to bring in somebody else, knowing Kyle Shanahan, because they need a legit third receiver there. And who knows? I mean, Emmanuel Sanders is probably about to fall off that cliff pretty soon too, as with all the injury history on top of the age. I love Terry McLaurin. I'm not 100% sold on Dwayne Haskins as a quarterback, but McLaurin went out and had big games this year with Case Keenum. He had big games when Haskins was playing. I think McLaurin is a guy unless I'm getting just huge value, I'm not trading those guys. And I don't know that you really can truly sell Deontay Johnson right now. I know he had a couple good weeks. I like him, but I don't think you get a whole lot for him. I mean, you might, maybe a second-round pick on the high end, and I would rather have Deontay Johnson, haven't seen him play, than have a second-round pick of a guy that I haven't seen at this level yet. That being said, I think there was a question there about the Titans drafting another receiver. I feel like they kind of have to. I mean, unless they really truly feel that Corey Davis is is going to do something, they've got to put somebody opposite AJ Brown, and he's been just a touch exposed, I think, in the playoffs, but some of that has been game flow. But from a fantasy standpoint, that it concerns me that there are games where if Derrick Henry is going to go out and get 30 carries, AJ Brown might get one target, one catch for 4 yards, or one target, one catch for 9 yards, like he's done in these 2 playoff games. I don't think they're going to do that against Kansas City. They're going to have to probably throw the ball more. So I guess we'll see. But I think the Titans do go get another wide receiver. I just don't know if it's one of the elite guys. They already spent a first rounder, a super high top 5 pick, maybe right on Corey Davis, and yep. I don't see them going. Obviously their first rounder is going to be lower this year, but I don't see them going a first round when they've got some other holes, and they're gonna they've got to re-sign Tannehill at quarterback because they can't keep going forward with without him basically. And but I could see them grabbing a guy in maybe the 3rd round, something like that, and getting a guy who's talented. But also not with the massive draft capital, with all the expectations that comes with drafting Corey Davis 4th or 5th overall.
Mm-hmm. Brian, why did I say that? Brad and Ryan, you know what, Brian? Fuck, you guys can both answer this. Ryan, with all that being said, do you have anything that you want to add to Brad's take there? It was, again, just surgical. I don't understand.
Yeah, Brad covered a ton of ground, man. A ton of ground. It's a meaty question from our guy Chris over there on the Patreon account. The thing that I want to just throw out there, and I'm sure Chris, the question submitter, would also agree, but there's pretty clearly some rankings here. I mean, to me, and Brad hit on, I do tend to agree with him that no player is truly untouchable, but what AJ Brown is, he's only 22 years old. He is a couple years younger than these other rookies, Debo, Deontay, Terry McLaurin, who are all, age 23, 24, and just what he's done and kind of where his future lies, whether that's with Tannehill or someone else. I mean, AJ Brown is legit special. I know we kind of throw that word around a lot, but what AJ Brown did this season and what he should continue to do, again, not untouchable, but I would be hard pressed to find an offer come my way that I would truly feel okay offloading. On the inverse of that, the flip side, I would be, as much as I do like Terry, as much as I do like Debo Samuel, I would be interested in kind of fielding those offers. Nate kind of touched on it before, as far as selling high, and someone that I've been a fan of for years, Sean Siegel, FF_contrarian, always talks about offloading and selling high and building and really kind of churning these dynasty rosters. And we fall into this trap almost annually about looking ahead, of course. These classes, every class coming up is always the best class, right? I mean, but what 2021 is looking like right now, and we saw flashes of it last night with what Jamar Chase did. I mean, this 2021 class is legit. So if I can flip, Terry McLaurin on the high, grab a couple high round picks, maybe some sort of mid range, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, and flip McLaurin on the high, because I'm kind of with Brad as well. I'm not 100% sold on that Washington offense with Dwayne Haskins on the controls, as much as McLaurin flashed and might be quarterback proof or borderline quarterback proof. If I can flip McLaurin on the high and kind of set myself up nicely to kind of snag one of these top 2021 players, I'm personally all for that. And the same, I could say the same for Debo Samuel as well, a player that I really like. Brad touched on the fit in San Francisco with Kid Shanny, who you have to love. You saw the flashes. That offense is going to continue to be one of the league's best. But again, if I can kind of package him up and start accumulating these early 2021 picks, I think I'm okay eating and kind of biting the bullet there with someone like Samuel and Terry McLaurin. But AJ Brown, Nate, I'm holding on to all the AJ Brown. Whatever AJ Brown I got, buddy, I'm going to be hard pressed to let AJ Brown go.
You shouldn't let AJ Brown go. I mean, A.J. Brown is proven he has elite upside, and I'm pretty sure, looking at this show sheet, A.J. Brown is going to come up at some point very soon. I don't want to add too much to this. You guys, it's crazy. You guys are good at this. Terry McLaurin, man, that situation was awful. Still, he played beyond it. But Debo Samuel, look, I'm not going to eat crow on Jimmy Garoppolo, okay? Jimmy Garoppolo's still going to fall apart. You mark my words. But I will say this. When you have a very accurate quarterback and you have someone like Deebo Samuel, who's a good separator and is great after the catch, you have a recipe for big plays all the time. And I really, truly like Deebo Samuel. You look at the breakout finder, what it ranked him last year. He was number 3 overall in the class with a 41.8% breakout rating. That's very, very high. I want to own Deebo Samuel. And you're right. Yeah, he is 24. He is a bit older than A.J. Brown. And so we should be considering that. And same thing with Johnson, a very good separator. And that might be kind of the key difference with some of these guys. Lastly, Brad, we'll hit this last question up. This is from second round pick. He says, which underperforming rookie do you still have hope will potentially receive the workload necessary to bounce back from this year's performance? Darrell Henderson, Paris Campbell, or J.J. Arcega-Whiteside? And here's the thing. That was my nickname originally. It was stolen from me. Spread the word. Brad, what do you got here?
I mean, if I'm picking from those three, the only one that I even kind of remotely like is Paris Campbell. I love him as an athlete. I love him as a receiver. I think they had everything with that team got thrown into flux this year when Andrew Luck retired right before the season started, and they and I know he was banged up at a point. I think he had a broken wrist or something. I really think he's the one guy I would be content being patient on. I wasn't a big Darrell Henderson guy coming out of college. I know he was super prolific at Memphis. I just wasn't a believer in the talent, I guess. I felt like the system in Memphis has produced running backs. We saw Tony Pollard come out this year and have better production in basically the same amount of work, just backing up Ezekiel Elliott. But he was so much more explosive. And that's what I feel like you need to see whenever you talk about a guy who, like, I don't like putting guys like Tariq Cohen in my fantasy lineup. Second backs that are clearly going to be, in the 8 to 10 touch range, kind of on the high end most weeks. That's not enough touches for me to have in my fantasy lineup unless we're talking like a 15-man starting lineup. And so I am not a big Darrell Henderson guy because even if Gurley is banged up and gets a few less touches next year, I don't see Darrell Henderson being the guy. I mean, he couldn't beat out Malcolm Brown this year for the backup role. That's just not a guy I want to go with. And who's the third guy? Arcega-Whiteside. Yeah. I'll go away from him because I'm pretty sure the Eagles are going to do something to reload their wide receivers this offseason.
Yeah, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, man. It's funny, though, because we rationalize away Paris Campbell's season. There were some injuries in there, but we all just say, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, he's no good. I mean, it's just an interesting situation between the two because Arcega-Whiteside had opportunities. I mean, towards the end of the year here especially, and did less than nothing. Ryan, is there anything at all that you just have to get off your chest about Darrell Henderson, Paris Campbell, or the other guy that we're not even gonna talk about him anymore?
Yeah.
One of the first two.
Yeah, one of the first two. We're gonna ignore the third player. Then no, Brad again. He's done it again. He's hit out of the park. He has touched on all the notes. I have him in the same order. I'm grabbing Campbell. I'm favoring Campbell still. Nate, I reminisce about your space suit and your space trip as often as I can. I truly enjoyed when you were up there with Paris after he completely set the combine ablaze. I believe in the talent, believe in the athleticism still. The situation in Indianapolis, we assume will get better. As Brad said, it kind of was a big mess after Andrew Luck upped and walked away. The last one on Darrell Henderson. I want to start wrapping this up here. The Rams fired their running back coach, which I think many on the timeline were suggesting is, they're going to, Sean McVay and the team is kind of all in on Todd Gurley and kind of getting him back to wherever he needs to be. I watched a ton of Todd Gurley this past season, and Todd Gurley runs like me, man, which is not good. Todd Gurley looks like he's just donezo. And the knee, it's bothering him. It's not bothering him. He's injured. He's banged up. He just doesn't look right. And I was a bit higher than Brad, I guess, on Darrell Henderson, but I think he does make a good point about him not being able to really maneuver on that depth chart last year at all, which has to be a concern. But just knowing what Gurley looked like last year, the Rams are kind of maybe signaling something different, and maybe they still do believe in their once talented running back, whatever you want to call him. Henderson is one to kind of keep tabs on, but out of that trio, man, easily far and away, Paris Campbell. No contest, Nate.
So let's transition from an elite receiver to an even more elite receiver, a receiver that has been dubbed the best bod in the draft. DK Metcalf, I might be a homer, went to Seattle, fell to the end of the second round. How did people let this happen? Just an absolute G with Russell Wilson out there. Russ is hitting him with dimes. DK Metcalf has made some huge plays. And in 2019, correct me if I'm wrong, boys, but only one receiver from this class had more receiving yards than DK Metcalf. Granted, it was also in less games. That's F1, Terry McLaurin. But DK Metcalf, 100 targets as a rookie. Look, Doug Baldwin couldn't even get 100 targets to save his life. And here we are, airing it out to DK. Over 900 receiving yards. Brad, is DK Metcalf the value play? Is it a mirage? Is this all going to dissolve in the morning? Tell me about DK Metcalf.
All right, so I don't think it's a mirage at all. I think he's a big-time player. And we've seen that as the season went on. He kept getting better. And I saw I think it's the next-gen stats where they show his route tree week 1. They show his route tree week 2. He's lining up on the left side every single play. He's running the same route 70% of the time. Just no versatility. Then they show the game in the playoffs against the Eagles where he went for 7 and 160 and a touchdown. He was lining up all over the field, running all kinds of routes. He has grown as a receiver in this year. Whether that's, Pete Carroll, Brian Schottenheimer, Russell Wilson, or whoever the receivers coach is helping him out, he has gotten better. And I think you could see it whenever he got the phone call that he was drafted. The first thing he said to Pete Carroll was, "Why did y'all wait so long?
Yeah.
Why did y'all wait so long?" Like, you talk about an absolute chip on his shoulder by the time he got to camp. He's like, screw these guys. They thought there were 60-plus guys better than me in this draft. Forget that. I'm going to go out and get better. And he worked at it, and he got better. He is a matchup nightmare. He's a monster of a human being, and he's super fast. There's not a lot of cornerbacks that he can't bully. He just has to learn how to bully them, and he's figuring it out now. Russ is starting to trust him. He's throwing him contested balls. When Metcalf's coming down with him, Russ is going to keep throwing them to him. I did at The Athletic, we did a 2020 mock draft, a 12-team mock for the 2020 season. We talked about A.J. Brown. He went 4.1 in that mock. So pretty high. DK Metcalf went 6.8. Mm-hmm. And, you tell me 2.5 rounds later, you can get DK Metcalf. Give me somebody else at 4.1 that – I like A.J. Brown a lot. I think the ceiling is there. His targets per game concern me a little bit. And like I said, just like I don't want to have a second running back, I need to have a guy. If I'm drafting a guy in the 4th round, I need there to be more than 5 targets per game. And maybe he'll get there next year. It might be higher with Tannehill, but I know he had some good weeks early in the season with Mariota too. Metcalf has all he's done is just progressively gotten better all year. I love the upside in the 6th round of a 2020 draft, and long term, he's definitely a top 20 dynasty wide receiver for me.
Hallelujah! What a take! What an advanced, excellent take about a great player that plays for a great organization. Go Hawks! So, Ryan, tread lightly here.
Yeah.
DK Metcalf. What is left? I'm looking at this bone on the table, and there's like
Brad's eating, man.
You're going to have to suck the marrow out of it.
Yeah, Brad's eating tonight.
Go, Ryan. What do you got?
Nate, I'm going to keep mine super brief because I need you to get on the mic because this is your guy. You can push the green screen aside and show people the signed memorabilia, man. But DK Metcalf, I was the one that kind of threw this question out there because we just spent a ton of time talking about A.J. Brown and people going to be falling over themselves to acquire A.J. Brown. Even someone like Deebo Samuel, I wouldn't be surprised if people have Deebo Samuel rated higher. And if you're telling me that I can go, like Brad just just said 6th round, 7th round, whatever it is, and DK Metcalf's still going to be sitting there for me. I'm perfectly content looking elsewhere, rounds 3, 4, 5, knowing that Metcalf's going to be there on the turn a few rounds after that. Just where he's going, I don't know how long that's going to last, but where he's going currently, where I think he's going to be going, doesn't quite make sense to me. So I love the value play. Big AJ Brown guy. I do like Deebo Samuel, as we talked about before, but that Metcalf, man, is screaming value. He's got the best bot in the draft, Nate.
Oh.
Talk to me about DK Metcalf. He has to be a value for you in more ways than one, buddy.
Listen, DK Metcalf is going to have the best bod in the next 10 drafts. Okay? 10 years from now, when he's a vet that's going to retire, he's still going to have a better body than everybody. I mean, yeah, and Brad brought it up, man. Periodically, I watch that video just because I want to feel something. I'm just so dead inside. So I go watch that video. And just seeing like that chip on his shoulder, this guy that we all said, oh, the Oakland Raiders, you're right. This is like the quintessential Al Davis pick or whatever, but I know, Ryan, what could have been. But it's hard to believe that DK Metcalf kind of fell where he did. I don't think most people, and I just want to clarify this, I don't think most people coming out of rookie drafts had him any lower than the 4th wide receiver taken.
Right. And that's a super necessary asterisk, because people at that time, touting like, how'd you forget about him? Like, no one was super low on him. Yeah.
Nobody forgot DK Metcalf, but here's the thing. What we did was we went and looked at Russell Wilson and his 52 pass attempts in 2018 and said, boy, how many of those 52 pass attempts are they going to give to DK Metcalf? They're going to give 30 to Lockett. They're going to give 10 to Disley. Chris Carson will get like 8 of them, and then they'll give 5 targets all season to DK Metcalf. So nobody wanted him. But the reality is that, look, he already got 100 targets as a rookie, and I still believe that this Seattle offense is going to take a step forward in an evolutionary process here, because I love that they try to establish the run, but the fact of the matter is the Titans are establishing the run. That's what it looks like. Seattle's done it a handful of times, but that's what it looks like. It's a big O-line that bullies everybody around. You get Derrick Henry past the first line of defenders, then every guy that he sees in the next line is the same size as him. And as soon as he gets past them, he's got 100 pounds on the next group of defenders. And that's how you run the ball down people's throats. Chris Carson has as many fumbles as the top 14 quarterbacks in the league. Go to PREF, the greatest website that was ever created besides another website. Go to that website. Type in fumbles and go look at how many quarterbacks there are, and then go look at the first guy that's not a quarterback. It's Chris damn Carson. and the problem is that they're establishing the run, but realistically, and we've looked at the efficiency of passing, they need to throw it more. Tyler Lockett, hyper efficient. DK Metcalf takes the top off defenses. Looked amazing this year. I expect him to only get better. As Brad alluded to, look, his route tree has changed. He's diversifying where he's playing on the field. You don't want to cover him one-on-one. He's going to blow by you. He's going to push you over. He's too big. I'm very excited for the future of DK Metcalf. I don't even know if he's a value play. I don't even know if you can get him anymore. Rightfully so.
I think that's completely fair analysis as well.
So back to touting this article that I worked on that talks about youth versus age apex. I wanted to bring up some names that I thought seemed like kind of a contrived dichotomy here. I've taken a younger player that's 23, I think, is the max age, and then I took another player that's age 27, and I kind of want to get your take, Brad. You don't have to go too high level with this if you don't want to. You can go as high level as you want. I mean, it's up to you. It's your show. I got 3 questions here for you. So AJ Brown, everybody, their tongue is hanging out of their mouth, rolled across the floor because AJ Brown blew up, except these 2 playoff games have been non-existent. So AJ Brown or Keenan Allen, which player are you trying to acquire? Which one do you prefer at this point?
From a dynasty standpoint, I mean, obviously AJ Brown is going to carry more value, I think, right now. But if I'm playing for right now, I want Keenan Allen because I want the guy that's going to have 150 targets. But that is going to very much depend on who the quarterback is for the Chargers. Because if it's not Phillip Rivers, who will sometimes throw Keenan Allen the ball 20 times in a game, then it concerns me. Like, is it a guy who's just going to look at Keenan Allen as another guy and, almost like a Jarvis Landry where he might be looking at 8 targets a game more often than not, and his value is not as high, then give me the big play guy. But long term, if I fall out of it, I'm dealing Keenan Allen, and I want AJ Brown back in that deal.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are high on A.J. Brown. Ryan, in this question, Keenan Allen, who for me was droppable in all formats for a majority of the year, him versus A.J. Brown, the prodigal son.
Yeah.
Who is it for you? I mean, look, Keenan Allen, I want to put this out there. He's going to be 28 years old when the next season starts, and we don't know who his quarterback is. And don't forget, very bad athlete. Very bad athlete, Ryan.
I've spent all show just waxing poetic about AJ Brown. So I am leaning the AJ Brown side. I'm not sure it's even particularly close for me, but I will say I think Brad's approach is super, level-headed and sound if you're playing for now. Allen does make sense. The talent is still there. Nate obviously has some questions about that athleticism and everything else. Nate has a bit of an ongoing vendetta, as some may know, with Keenan Allen. But AJ Brown, again, for me, just comes back to just raw talent, breakout finder numbers, man. Everything on paper and his play, his production this year, just arrows, man. Arrows are shooting up into the sky. They're beautiful. They're streaming. It's just the sky is the absolute limit for AJ Brown. I want AJ Brown any chance, any which way that possibly presents itself to me.
There's few people in this world that can say things that I'm going to buy into instantaneously and ask no questions. One, Jeff Goldblum, of course.
Your guy.
He's our most important asset. The next thing is Tony Romo. And Tony Romo was doing a broadcast one game talking about A.J. Brown, and he spent at least a full minute talking about just the skill set and the route running and how he believes that this guy is going to be a star in the league. And a majority of the year, we saw him not just getting open as a receiver, but making plays out of the backfield, showing that dynamism. And that's something that you just don't see a lot from a guy that's 230 pounds, at 6 foot, runs a 4.49. I mean, incredible athleticism. Still very young, 22.6. And Brad is exactly right again. It has to come down to whether or not you're playing for the W. Now, what happens is you can get Keenan Allen a lot cheaper than you used to, and you're going to be able to get him for even cheaper when this rookie draft rolls around. I guarantee it. If you've got a later pick, if you've got the 112, there's somebody out there that would, honest to God, be considering that. So if you're fortunate enough to be a contender with a decent first-round pick somewhere, not too early because we all agree there's some great talent in this class, but Keenan Allen's going to continue to put up production for quite some time. I don't think it's going to end anytime soon because he was never beating people with athleticism. That age apex is sort of the breakdown of the athleticism and the body over time, and sometimes it's a change in quarterback play that can affect that. But Keenan Allen's always won on nuance. It's sort of the difference when me and Matt Kelly argue Julio Jones' upside. Julio Jones, though nuanced, has won off explosion and speed and that versatility. Keenan Allen's never won with that. So there's still a lot to like about him, but I'm with you guys. I love A.J. Brown. I mean, I'm on the A.J. Brown bandwagon. I've been taking dumps on Keenan Allen all year. Sometimes deserved, sometimes not. Finished number 8 overall in fantasy points per game. I think he finished as the number 6 wide receiver in some formats. But I think that's a good way to go with what Brad said. So Brad, let me hit you with the next one. You're on the hot seat. I mean, you're putting your whole Dynasty rep on the line. I mean, that's what these questions do. When you answer them, it's like they're locked in time forever. It's a time capsule. So, Brad, question.
Fair enough.
Here we go. DJ Moore or Odell Beckham Jr.?
This is not close to me. I am taking DJ Moore in a heartbeat. Wow. I number one, trust the athleticism. Number two, you talked about his age earlier. Super productive. Beckham seems to be declining, and I realized we talked about earlier, situations can change, but it's unlikely to change that Baker Mayfield is his quarterback anytime soon unless he gets traded, and meaning unless OBJ gets traded. I don't believe in Mayfield as a big-time franchise quarterback. I don't think he can be prolific enough as an NFL quarterback to support multiple dynasty wide receivers or multiple fantasy wide receivers. I think he can do. There very rarely will you see Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham productive in the same game. It's usually one or the other. You're flipping a coin. Good luck with that in DFS. So going forward, I know, it was this Stefanski that they just hired, and he said the first thing they want to do is try to unlock the potential in this guy.
Innovative. That's innovative stuff. No one's ever thought about Odell throwing to him.
Tough to imagine.
They're up here, boys. They're up here. They're locked in.
Odell Beckham should never be out targeted by Jarvis Landry in any scenario, and he was in multiple games this year. I feel like he's the kind of guy that you should force the ball to. When they're not doing it, it tells me that either he's hurt, something's not right with him. He's on that. I feel like on that downslope. I think he's toast. Give me DJ Moore.
Oh my! I love the take. I do
enjoy the take as well.
You came right out of the gate. There was no messing around. I mean, you guys touched gloves and you just started throwing haymakers. Ryan, it's all on you. Your whole credibility. Risk it all.
We got Brad set the bar super high there. I am also going DJ Moore, but I will say with a little more sympathy than perhaps Brad, it does pain me to not turn away from Odell Beckham, but just in general have these questions about Odell Beckham, because Odell Beckham gave all of us some of the coolest and best football highs and moments that we've ever experienced, the way he's produced at such a young age. But now looking back on it and looking at what we have currently, not to this extreme, but I kind of get those Josh Gordon type vibes where, for me, maybe this is just me, but Josh Gordon was always this mythical figure. What he did in 2013, like I will never forget that season, and just the bar was always like permanently stuck that high for me. So no matter what, like I've just perpetually believed in Josh Gordon, no matter what the circumstances, no matter what the suspensions were. And again, Odell not to this extreme, no off-field stuff to worry about, but and the production is far different. But I just feel like Odell is sitting at this spot that like no matter what happens, like I'm not gonna move him off of that like wide receiver like 13 or whatever spot wherever I might have him. But it's definitely more in this case, but perhaps a bit of a closer gap than my guy Brad here for some reasons. But I definitely respect the take because much like Brad, I don't that Baker Mayfield situation is super weird to me as well.
I think the difference here for Odell Beckham would be whether or not he went to a better offense. I mean, that really is what it is. If Odell moves somewhere else, we're talking about one of the most elite playmakers the league has ever seen. But the fact of the matter is that Jarvis Landry's floor, I don't know if this guy signed like a behind-the-scenes contract with the NFL or something, but this guy's got a floor that just does not go away. I mean, over the last 5 years, 130 targets is the least that he's seen, and over his career, he's never had less than 80 receptions in a season. I mean, it's unreal. Odell Beckham wasn't healthy towards the end of the year. I agree with Brad. I'm not sure that Baker Mayfield is the answer, which is funny because I think a lot of us, when Odell signed there, we were like, yeah, here we go. Wide receiver 1 overall, and there's some tweets out there. If you dig them up, I think I said it.
Oh, yeah.
I think I was on board, but now we're looking at a guy that's got an injury history throughout his career. Missed multiple games over lots of different seasons, playing with the quarterback with some inefficiencies, probably playing with one of the most steady wide receivers he's ever played with in Jarvis Landry on the opposite side. That's not going to change anytime soon, and it's a team that wants to run the ball. I mean, they've got Nick Chubb. They had Kareem Hunt this year. I don't know if he'll still be there, but they've got reasons to want to move the ball as well. So Odell's ceiling might not be much higher than what we saw in 2019, which is right around 130 targets, could be 140, which is great, but there's a lot of target competition there. So I'm with you, man. I'm a fan of DJ Moore. He's too young. He's too good. His situation's going to get better, and I think I would take DJ Moore as well. Last question for you, Brad. On this topic. I wrote this one as well, and I think Ryan's going to be on the opposite side of this one as I look at it. Chris Godwin or DeAndre Hopkins?
This to me it's closer than the last one, the DJ Moore OBJ, but it's still not close. I want Godwin for sure. And the biggest reason, he just outproduced in less games. He just outproduced and DeAndre Hopkins in fantasy this year. You're talking, he's a wide receiver 2. I think he's a top 3 dynasty wide receiver. DeAndre Hopkins was a wide receiver 5, played one more game. I think the only potential for bad taste in people's mouth with Godwin is that he missed week 16 and 17. And he, in the fantasy playoffs, when you need him the most, he was not on the field. And especially in those games where Jameis Winston was just chucking the ball 50 times and he made Brashad Perriman relevant again, you would have loved to see Godwin on the field in those games. And that's the only way that I can see any negativity toward Godwin because I know everybody here loves Godwin. I know Matt Kelly loves Godwin, and I feel like he exceeded expectations even with the bar set pretty high because he was just spectacular when he was on the field this year.
Ryan, I heard you sucking air through your teeth.
Yeah.
You looked uncomfortable. I heard your chair squeaking.
There's a lot of emotions. I'm in a real tough spot right now. There's a lot going through my head. God, boys, I love Chris Godwin, and I think Brad's absolutely right. He's a top 3, top 2 dynasty wide receiver. So I'm going to kind of hedge a little bit, go back to what Brad was saying. It all depends what you're playing for. If you're playing for now, man, I still love I have a thing with DeAndre Hopkins. I talked about him before. I can't quit him. I'm not going to quit him yet. Big believer in Deshaun Watson. And I hate that it comes back to situation. We just talked about situation with Odell Beckham, but I think Bill O'Brien is like an idiot, man. And like just that, I don't trust Houston to really fall in sync with Bill O'Brien wearing the GM hat and coaching. As much as I love Deshaun Watson, I get a really uncomfortable feeling about that whole situation, coupled with the fact we talked about Chris Godwin's environment playing opposite a monster like Mike Evans, where in Houston, Hopkins has done it for so long by himself, different quarterbacks, quarterback proof through and through, all this stuff. But, it would sure be nice to have someone opposite DeAndre Hopkins here that can stay on the field like a Will Fuller. The game is so different for the Texans when Will Fuller's out there and running deep and opening things up. So I think talent-wise, Godwin, again, is so clearly up there, like Brad said, top 3, top 2, whatever it might be. So I'm going to go with Godwin as well, but I just want to make everyone know that my heart, my heart is still saying DeAndre Hopkins, Nate. The head is saying Godwin, but the heart wants what the heart wants.
Well, Brad, let me throw this one back at you because this didn't come up. Jameis Winston is a 2020 unrestricted free agent and wants over $30 million a year annually. If Jameis Winston is not the quarterback for the Bucs, does that change your opinion?
Potentially, but not in the sense that I think Bruce Arians is fine with basically anybody that's willing. I think he wants a guy to take risks. I think some of the interceptions that Winston threw were not taking risks; they were just stupid throws. Yeah. And you can have a guy that allows his receiver an opportunity to make a catch and still make smart choices with the throw. And I think that's what will help Chris Godwin and Mike Evans still be successful because number one, their pass defense down there was so horribly atrocious that if they don't address that quick, they're going to be playing in shootouts again all year next year too. And at that point, I want the guy there's an opportunity for 50 throws every game, no matter who the quarterback is.
I want to add one more thing to the whole Jameis Winston kind of saga. Uncle Sigmund Bloom had a tweet. It might have been him or Matt Waldman. One of the football guys basically said about Jameis Winston, he's like the guy that lights the house on fire, but then has to come back and he's the guy that also puts out the fire. Jameis Winston has to walk on the field and throw at least an interception just to kind of be okay, here we go. The adrenaline's rushing. I'm live. I'm focused. He throws that first early duck, that early pick, and then for the next 3.5 quarters, he's just a monster. 3, 4 scores, 5 scores. It's such a roller coaster. I love and hate the Winston coaster, but he's just such a fun fit for that Bruce Arians offense. Like Brad said, he just wants people to throw it, be fearless, and just air it out.
You're right. I mean, the Jameis Winston corollary is interesting because he is a risky passer, and that's what you need in that offense to kind of deliver the things that it's done in the past. So, Brad, totally different here. I'm going to shift gears on you, completely changing up the gears. I want to talk to you about fantasy team names. Is this something that you have insight on? Do you have experience with team names in fantasy sports?
I do. I have at least in a league where everybody knows each other, I have a problem with people who just use their name for their fantasy team name to the point where when I'm the commissioner, I will go and change people's team names.
You will assign team names.
Yeah. So for instance, I had this issue with Jeremy Hellickson one year. He just put J Hell for his team name, and I'm like,
terrible name.
No, it became Helly Bo Belly because it's like, I'm going to embarrass you if you're not going to take the time to do something. So, for a while I had an interesting fantasy baseball team name. And again, this was prior to me playing in the big leagues, because once you're in the big leagues, fantasy baseball is just off the table. It's, as taboo as gambling is in that sport. My team name was Nasty Wigglers. And I sent that to you, and you're like, what is the story behind that? So basically what it was my changeup was my best pitch when I was an overhand pitcher in the minor leagues, and it was always signaled with a wiggle 4. So if you saw the catcher's fingers wiggling, you threw a changeup. And I was probably in my more arrogant days, decided to make my email address Nasty Wigglers and whatever else. So that was my team name for fantasy baseball. But I've got a couple good ones for fantasy football too. One of them is, it's better read, and like you get somebody to read it, and then they, like, when they say it out loud, it's funny. But it's Hoof, Hoof, Hearted, Hearted. So you say it out loud, it's Hoof Hearted. Yes. And of course I have my team logo is a pink unicorn that's farting, and it's awesome. I mean, it's totally classic. Yeah. So perfect. But the one that I'm actually the most proud of, I have for there are not very many people that know this. I have 11 toes, and I have 6 toes on my right foot. The last 3 are webbed. I was born that way. It's. Do
you swim faster? Is that?
I swim in circles. Okay. And so that right leg just works way better than the left.
I got you.
So, so I have a team name that I have stuck with for a long time called Too Many Toes on the Field. And that's my favorite go-to.
You're speaking Nate's language right now. Man. He eats these up.
I love it. I have fun with it, and I just feel like if you can't have fun, if you take it too seriously, where you're so focused on, I have to worry about my players, and I can't even focus on my team name at all, I'm just going to type my name in there, then I'm going to have trouble being in a league with you all year.
Oh, man, I love it. And that's a surprise to me to hear that you weren't starting yourself in fantasy baseball. I didn't know that wasn't a thing. But people that don't know, you said overhand, but you threw underarm submarine. Is that correct?
Yeah, after I got to AAA, I was an overhand starter until I got to AAA, and then the A's converted me to submarine. So by the time I broke into the big leagues, I was a submariner. And at that time, I was in a free, just with buddies, kind of a bragging rights fantasy baseball league. And it was like in my second or third outing in the big leagues, I'm going into the game, and I'm facing Edgar Renteria, who's a third baseman for the Tigers at the time. And I was like, he's on my fantasy team. And just the fact that...
That's going to be the most surreal feeling, yeah.
Yeah. Just the fact that it entered my head, I was like, I've got to move on from this. I can't. And so I literally went home. I got him out. I got out of the inning, went home that night, and I literally emailed the whole league, and I said, I'm sorry, I have to quit the league. Like, I can't have this thought in my head. I'm just trying to do everything I can to stick in the big leagues. And so, yeah, I gave up fantasy baseball quick. And after 10, 15 years of not playing it, I was just like, I'm not going to get back into a league where I have to pay attention 162 days a year, and there's just no let up. Yeah, like I just there's not enough money on the line for me to make it worth it.
Yeah, it's that's interesting, man. And look, you brought up the A's. I really want to talk about why did the A's try to convert you, but more importantly, for the fans of this fantasy football podcast, which typically is prior to tonight, I'm going to try and stay on track, and that's something I just don't typically do. So, Brad, let's talk about 2020 free agent running backs of note. I'll throw a name out, quick blurb, whatever you want to do. Ryan, you can throw something on top of it.
Yeah.
We'll make a hot take sandwich. All right, I'm going to start with this one right here for you, Brad. Kareem Hunt.
So I think he ends up back in Cleveland. And the reason being, he's restricted. And that's the biggest thing that concerns me is I don't know. This is a terrible year to be a free agent running back when you have the draft guys coming out that are coming out. Why would a team pay a guy an obscene amount of money when they could just draft a guy in the 3rd round, pay him a lot less, and he might be just as good? Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, his offers on the table, especially with the potential baggage that comes with him, where one more mess up and he's probably missing a full year. he was the RB16 in weeks 10 through 16 after he came back, and he can still be really productive. I like him, but I think he stays in Cleveland, and I think they go with that tandem backfield to take a little heat off of Nick Chubb.
I love it. Ryan?
I'm right there with him, and I'm still particularly high on Kareem Hunt. Probably going to settle somewhere around that like RB 14, 15, 16 in Dynasty. Certainly has the ability to catch the ball and be serviceable in that regard. It's just it's so, again, talked all show about situation, how quickly things change. I imagine we're all very, very high on Nick Chubb for many of the same reasons, talent wise, all that stuff. But so playing behind a Nick Chubb and knowing that they have the wide receivers that they do, brand new coaching staff and scheme and everything being implemented, it's harder to be higher on him. But I'm certainly intrigued, and I'm buying Kareem Hunt. Like, someone's offloading him for all those opposite reasons, concerned about the scheme and staff and all that. Like, I get it, but I'm gonna be the guy that's gonna be trying to scoop up Kareem Hunt wherever I can.
So let's talk about another running back. I saw a tweet. Somebody said, is this the running back that's the number 1 overall pick in 2020? And to that I say, I don't even have him ranked higher than Leonard Fournette. So, Brad, let's talk about Derrick Henry, who is on a historic run, literally, right now. Coming up on that free agency, probably made himself a lot of money. What's the story with Derrick Henry?
So I think in 2020, there's no way Tennessee lets him go. I don't know what the contract's going to look like, but he means too much to this team, let alone, like, you can't replace him with anybody in the draft with the style of runner he is and how, a guy that can just go out and drop 30, 35 carries on a given week. There isn't a rookie coming in that's going to be able to handle that workload. That being said, I'm nervous about a possibility of injury next year. He runs so physically. He doesn't make guys miss, really. They just bounce off of him. And when you're talking, he's going to be pushing 350, 370 carries by the end of these playoffs, depending on how far they go. That's a lot of thumping on that body. And I'm not saying he's going to be hurt by the end of the playoffs, but it wouldn't surprise me if he broke down at some point next year. And if I'm having to take him in the first round, as much as there's upside there, if I have to take him, I will, but I'm trading him pretty quickly in the season because I don't know that he's going to last the whole thing.
I love it. Ryan?
Yeah, he's going to stumble into a whole bunch of cash, man. Like Nate said, there's obviously no back that's hotter right now, deep into the postseason. I will just add one more note that I want to get Nate's take on it because he obviously led in with a Leonard Fournette take as well. So my guy E, man, Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, tweeted out that the coolest thing about Derrick Henry's game is that they, like Brad said, they literally run this guy to the ground. Just the workload, everything runs through him. Even after all just the volume that he has, he just looks so unaffected by it. He just looks like he's ready for more. To Brad's point, I mean, the injury stuff, that has to be in the back of your mind no matter what, just given the workload. But he comes off the field, man, and to me, like, he just looks fresh. Like, he just looks like he's ready to carry like another 7 guys on his back or something like that. I do agree with Nate. I don't have Henry ranked ahead of Fournette either. But Nate, go ahead and tell the people all your thoughts about Derrick Henry.
Well, personally, I don't think Derrick Henry and Leonard Fournette are even close. But what I do want to say is, what a nightmare for Tennessee to not only have to pay Derrick Henry, but to also have to pay Ryan Tannehill, who's going to be a free agent next year as well. So
I can't believe that's even being talked about right now. It's the craziest thing to me.
They're getting hit with twice the payday. But here's the thing that didn't come up, and the reason that I'm just not as high on Derrick Henry. It should be obvious. The guy had only 18 catches in 2019, and prior to that, his next best season was the year before with only 15 catches. So he's not a pass catcher, and that doesn't mean that it isn't in his repertoire. It's not something that he can't do. It's just in Tennessee, they don't use him this way. And maybe he'll develop into more of a screen game player in the future. I don't know. But the lack of receiving is what scares me because he's not going to have 16 touchdowns in 2020. And I'll take that bet for just about anybody. I mean, the regression is coming. 16 touchdowns, the same way we saw 18 from Alvin Kamara last year to only 6 this year. Highly unpredictable. So the variance in touchdowns, the lack of receiving ability, those two things scare me. Probably re-signs with Tennessee. That's all I've got to say on it. Buy Leonard Fournette everywhere you can. Question for you, Brad. Matt Breida. Now, he's on this list. I didn't type this list. I'm down the middle on Matt Breida. Sell me on Matt Breida or confirm my doubts.
I'm probably confirming your doubts, and I like Breida. He's fun to watch when he's healthy, but he's always hurt, like always hurt. Even the 2018, he was questionable like every single game with an ankle injury, and you just never knew if he was going to get a full workload or not. Even when after Jerick McKinnon went down, he was basically the only guy there. They brought in a bunch of other guys. Raheem Mostert has taken off in that offense. I think Breida is going to be struggling to find a backup job somewhere. I mean, he's probably going to get one somewhere, but he's going to have a hard time seeing the field. And I don't think he has a whole lot of fantasy value. And I would be trying to offload him as quickly as I could if I owned him.
Ryan.
Yeah. The injury history is the screaming, high flying red flag there for sure. I think, I might be on kind of the one side of this myself where I think depth chart wise, talent wise, when he's on the field, I think Breida presents their best option at running back. We were talking a little bit off air before, boys, about that San Francisco backfield in general, how Shanahan is going to keep, a stable of runners. So it's going to be kind of hard to, paired with the injury history to really confidently kind of saddle up and ride Breida. Shanahan might dump two backs and draft two more backs, man. No one knows. He's going to keep things fresh there. So I have very little confidence in Breida. I want to have more given how much I like him as a player and as a talent, but I just don't have it there in that particular spot given the injury history and everything else kind of working against him.
I've got nothing to add on Matt Breida. Okay, Brad. Hit these up rapid fire here. We got a couple more. I might skip around a little bit, but this is an interesting game. So let's go Austin Ekeler.
I like Austin Ekeler. I mean, his size is the only thing that concerns me about his full season workload, but he's so good in the passing game, and he's showed this year he could run between the tackles. I like him. I assume that he's going to be hanging out in LA for a while with the Chargers there because I think they're going to let Gordon walk.
I love it. Ryan, you want to add something to that?
Nope, right there with him, man. He should be the Chargers RB1. They're going to have to get someone behind him just because, like Brad said, that size, you're not going to get a full workload. Although he's shown when Gordon was holding out that he's more than capable of it. I just don't know if he's going to do it for 16 straight. But talent-wise, man, ability, he deserves to be that RB1 or RB1A or something like that for sure.
Well, let's go rapid fire. We all love Miles Sanders. We had Miles Sanders ranked number 1 overall. Josh Jacobs right behind him. Miles Sanders has looked great this year. Talk about Jordan Howard. What are we doing with Jordan Howard?
I think he's got to roll somewhere, in the NFL. He's only 25 years old or whatever, but it's not going to be on my fantasy team. Like I have got no confidence in him. I don't want to play him. He's a 0 in the passing game, so his floor is super low. But I think he can be an effective back for a team. It's just not a fantasy guy I want to own.
Love it.
Yeah, much like Arcega Whiteside at the wideout position, man. I'm completely off of Howard. I've been off of Howard. I was bummed when Howard went to Philadelphia because I wanted the seas to part for Miles Sanders, but it's coming, boys. It's coming.
So Kenyan Drake rises from the ashes in Arizona, and no better place because it's hotter than hell out there. Tell me about Kenyan Drake. Is he going to get re-signed in Arizona? David Johnson looked like he was running in mud. Chase Edmonds had a couple blow-up games, didn't really sustain. If you sold him after those games, kudos to you. I sold him after those games. Brad, Kenyan Drake, what do we got?
I mean, he has to stay in Arizona, right? Like that offense completely changed when he got there, and they were good without him, at times. But all of a sudden, you had a running back you had to worry about. And I know the David Johnson contract is a mess, but I think it more than anything, it just shows how bad of a talent judge that Adam Gase is, because he made this guy split carries all the time, and he did he showed. We talked about Tannehill, and Gase was terrible with him, and now he goes to the Jets, and Le'Veon Bell's terrible. Like, I don't want to touch anybody that has to do with Adam Gase, and I'm excited when they get out of there because they have a something to prove when they leave.
Yeah, Drake was always one of those quote-unquote my guys, and I was so stoked when he finally got to Miami and landed in a perfect spot in Arizona where that offense is, one of the more exciting ones. Kyler Murray on the controls, options at wide receiver. They're going to keep adding talent to the draft. So I'm all in on Kenyan Drake, a 26-year-old player in a pretty pristine landing spot. So give me Drake.
All right, this is the last one right here.
Ooh, make it good, Nate.
I'm going to go to Carlos Hyde on this one because I want to talk about Houston, not just because of this reason, but Brad, I also want to say that when the Houston Astros joined the AL West, it was a sad day for me, and since has been so much worse than I ever could have imagined. All these years later, I can't believe what I'm seeing. Let's talk about Carlos Hyde. Duke Johnson's there. What is his future? And parlay that into, is there any team in the NFL that seems more likely to add a running back through the 2020 draft class than the Houston Texans, Brad?
Oh, man. I mean, I could say Atlanta's going to add a running back, right? Because Devontae Freeman's gone. I think the Chiefs do. I think the Buccaneers probably do also. That being said, Houston needs a guy bad. But this is now a guy that has had two separate NFL regimes think he's better than Duke Johnson, which is frustrating for me from a talent perspective, but he's going out there and producing. And I wanted to see Duke get the lion's share of the opportunities. It didn't happen. But he's just too inconsistent for me to trust unless I'm in a really deep league, and he's getting older. Like, he's not getting any younger, and he's a lot of wear on that body. I'm trying to get off him a little bit, although I do think he could end up with a starting role somewhere to start the year just because there's going to be opportunity out there.
Ryan, you want to polish this one off?
Yeah, I'll never forget the day when the Texans, one of Bill O'Brien's, one of his bright spots was trading for Duke Johnson. I remember, I think Nate and I had texts that like crossed each other. We were both like, dude, this is it. It's happening. Get in the bunker. Like, we're all in. We're going. And obviously that wasn't the case. Duke Johnson just continually overlooked for some reason. I feel about Carlos Hyde how I feel about Jordan Howard. Just a guy. Carlos Hyde looking at that 29, age 30 season coming up here when we know all about what happens with running backs when that happens. I just don't think he's a talent that stands out to me. He probably floats around for a couple different teams here, as Brad was saying. But I think the Houston Texans definitely go running back early, or maybe they snag a Melvin Gordon free agency. Who knows? But I'm personally off of Carlos Hyde. Been off of Carlos Hyde, Nate.
I love it. I don't have much to add to Carlos Hyde. I mean, this is a guy that's going to be 30 years old or close to it when the next season starts. Not an electric athlete. He got a hell of a workload this year. I mean, aside from the passing game, but he's never been that much of a receiver. I know people are going to go back and cite 2017 when he had 88 targets, which right? I can't even figure out how that happened. I'm perplexed. I mean, 59 catches, clearly he did fine in the opportunity role, but yeah, he might get a job somewhere. He's not a sexy name. He's not a name that I really want to own. Lamar Miller, I believe, is also a free agent this year, which is more of the reason why I bring up Houston, because I believe he's a 2020 or 2019 free agent. So him and Hyde walk in the same year. Duke Johnson has never been given an opportunity. So unless you truly believe in Duke Johnson, and you've been burned twice already, then Houston seems like a very likely spot for either, like Ryan said, a veteran like Melvin Gordon or a rookie in this incoming class. So, Brad, man, I want to thank you.
Marathon, bro.
You're better than advertised. I mean, we took you
exceeded expectations,
blind into numerous topics that weren't on the show sheet, and you handled them like a veteran. I mean, much like your baseball career, you came out here and you did your job, and it was excellent. And I'm sure only great things are going to come from you in the future. I enjoy looking at your ranks. And again, people, if you don't follow Brad on Twitter, at Brad Ziegler, the guy's incredible. Came on here, gave us a fantastic show, man. Everybody give him a follow. Check him out. Is there anything you want to plug, Brad, while you're here?
No, I'm good. I had a foundation called Pastime for Patriots that I started when I was in the minors and or right when I broke into the big leagues. It supported military families. It's still in existence. It's we've had to do some shifting around, especially after I got in the big leagues or after I retired. I mean, but there's I think the website might still be up, and if it's not, then you want to look for Pastime Youth Academies. It was kind of centered under there, but Pastime with a Purpose is kind of the overall thing. We want to help out those who serve our country, service on a daily basis, and their families as well.
Very cool, man. Very cool cause. So, well, thank you, Brad, for coming on. Again, exceeded expectation. I'm sure this episode is going to get resounding reviews. I'm looking forward to it. So we will see everybody hopefully next week. I mean, this is when our grind starts. The draft is coming up. Everybody's talking about these rookies. The breakout finder. I have very, very, very cool information that I cannot release yet, but we are closer to something tangible than you can even imagine. May be right at your fingertips sooner than you can expect. I mean, what? Huh?
Keep it, bro.
All right,
just end the show, buddy.
We will see everybody next week. See you guys later.